Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome everybody to the July webinar of 2025 CARES Ethical Behavior Code Explained. As you all may know, one CEU coming from an ethics training is now required annually for all CARES trained and provides valuable CEUs, continuing education units, to maintain your certification. By attending today's ethics refresher in its entirety, you'll meet the annual requirement. My name is Dwayne Ellis. I'm the Outreach and Training Coordinator for the Georgia Council for Recovery. But more importantly, I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that it's been 9 years since I felt the need to use any mind-altering drugs to change the way that I feel. And this sound that you hear coming out of my mouth that I'm using to express myself and tell you all about me today is called a voice. And for the longest time, it had been silence because of shame and stigma, and you all know. But today, I use my voice to encourage others in active addiction and in recovery to use their voice for the betterment of their lives and others. We're going to go over some housekeeping really quick, okay? This will be an interactive webinar, so we ask for your engagement and participation upon request from the host and the co-host. Please keep your microphone mute if you are not speaking, as a host or co-host will mute you if needed. Everyone who remains until the end of the webinar will receive 1.5 CEUs. You will receive a certificate from Alvin Cotton, who just so happens to be our presenter too, in probably about a week. Anyone who shows up more than 15 minutes late or has to step away for that long may continue to attend the webinar, but they will not receive credit. Excuse me. The certificates will likely go out early next week, as I said, and you can search for the name Alvin in your inbox if you can't find the certificate. Make sure your name on your screen matches the name you want on your certificate. Please include your pronouns if you want us to make sure we can address you correctly. If there are multiple people watching the webinar together from one device that you are all sharing, please email Alvin with the list of people who are in attendance. Also, please make us aware by email if you borrowed someone else's link to sign on to this webinar. You may need to rename yourself as well, because when you log in, you might log in as the person's name that you borrowed. If you have any questions that are not related to today's webinar topic, like information on a CARES Connect or etc., please feel free to email me afterward. I'll be glad to help you with those separately. Thank you all for understanding. And as far as questions, please put them in the chat. I'm gonna do my best to keep up with all the questions, but there are gonna be moments during this presentation where you'll be able to ask those questions. But without further ado, I'm gonna introduce our producer. Our presenter. I'm sorry. He's the CARES database coordinator, CARES 28. He's a CPSAD and a certified recovery support specialist in Alabama. Alvin, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Really good to see y'all. This is great. I'm seeing 209 people in here so far, so that's really awesome. And Dwayne, are we going to do a poll?
Yes, I'll put it up.
Okay. We're going to ask you to tell us who's here so that we will have an idea as who's showing up. Are you a CARES CPSAD? Are you an aspiring CARES? Are you a clinician, a recovery ally, a CPSMH, a CPSP, a CPSY, a forensic peer mentor, or other? And I see we're over 100 responses already. Y'all are hopping on this. That's awesome. We'll wait another few minutes. We're up to 150 out of 210. Let's see if we can get it up a little higher, everybody. So far, it's 77% are CARES, 28% are CPSMH. I think these numbers I think some people may be checking more than one, which is fine. So if you, but we're going to have more than 100%, it looks like, on this.
Wow, 15% peer mentors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, someone asking if they need to show that video, Alvin.
You do not have to show your video. So Dwayne, can you end the poll or do I need to do it?
No, I can end it
Okay.
and I'll share the results.
All right, there we go. Let's get a picture of that. That's really good.
Wow, good job, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. So like Dwayne said, my name is Alvin Cotton. I'm the database coordinator at the Georgia Council, but more importantly, I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is I haven't felt the need to drink a drink to deal with my anxiety, my loneliness, my depression, my isolation, or my legal problems since September 13th, 2001. That's 23 years, coming up to a birthday fairly soon. I'm incredibly grateful that I decided to turn in a different direction. If you look at what was going on that week, the second week of September 2001, there was a lot going on that week. I'm not sure if 9/11 is what caused me to decide to do something different, or the DUI that I had 10 days before that, or was I just ready to change, or did DeKalb County also want me to change enough for me to do something different? You know, there's a lot of reasons why we turn in a different direction. What I'm grateful for is that while I was in the middle of that mystery, I found people who were in recovery to talk to, but peers didn't exist and back then. So that's why it's really important for us to do what we're doing, because the very best person to have been sitting across from me back then would have been you. Someone who's very present, says recovery is real, recovery is the expectation, recovery is possible, and that anyone can recover with the right support, effort, and circumstance. I'm really grateful. It's made me marriageable. My husband's in the next room. It's made me employable. I love my job with the Georgia Council. And I just want us I'm really happy that you want to be here because I know that you're the best help. So thank you for being here. It's great. So I'm really glad that the state has put this focus on ethics this year, and the turnout indicates that I think y'all are some of you are here because you really have to be, but a lot of you, I think, know that ethics will make you a better peer, make you a better professional, and will give you a chance to do a better job in supporting peers. And that's why this is really important. We do have a renewed ethics on focus on ethics this year, because without it, what we're almost always going to do is do what our gut says. And our gut will say different things at different times. Other people's guts will say different things at different times. And so the great thing is that if we use some tools to make sure that we are listening to more than just our gut, we become reliable, consistent, and professional. That's a great way to protect the check too, because this is an important thing. You know, you screw up on one of these, and this could be the kind of thing that would cause big problems for you and for your organization. And I think it honors the profession for us to be taking care of our peers with this kind of care and attention. What Shane always says, and Shane, this is, I've been watching Shane's webinar. He's the one who does this for the CARES Academy. And what he says is that it plants the seed of ethics in your heart. And I really like that, because that's how we become different people. It's strange that doing things the way we're supposed to at work can just seep into our lives completely and change everything that we do. And I think that once we have that seed of ethics in our heart, then we'll treat people professionally, and then it'll just start filling in our lives. So I think it's a great way to do this. You know, maybe you'll start stopping at stop signs. I don't know. That may be asking a lot, but you know, that's the kind of thing that happens when we start paying attention to what we do and how we react to the world. So ethics starts with what you're doing when everybody's watching you, but it ultimately becomes what you do when nobody's watching. And I think that's really good to keep in mind. So let me show you this. There we go. There's me. I've been a database coordinator since 2022. I was a CARES 28 back in 2018. I'm in inactive CARES in Alabama, and I live in Roswell with my husband, Ben Lewis, and our cats, Nemo and Lestat. I thought one of them might be eavesdropping on us today, but there's nobody on the bed behind me, so it's just me today. But one's an orange cat, one's a black cat. And I am older than I look, everybody tells me. And that's all I'm going to say about that. There we go. So this session was adapted with gratitude from the original training that CARES did which was created by George Brought and Owen Doherty, who was the former deputy director of GC4R. You know, George would always talk about the silence. The other side of silence, and I think that's one of the things that happens too. I really like that image when I think about it, because even when I'm silent, there is a lot going on in my head and in my gut. And that's what drives my decisions. If I am not talking about stuff, if I'm not connecting out there in the world, and if I'm not using some other tool to help me make a different kind of decision. So I think it's really important. And one of the other things that Shane says that I really like is that information is only information until you use it. Then it becomes wisdom. So I appreciate that. And I know that's what we're doing here. All right. And you will get this slide deck when we're done. It'll go out with the certificate, just to let you know. All right. So this is what we do with an ethics training. First of all, we're going to talk about the code of ethics, and you'll get a chance to endorse it when you submit CEUs at the end of the year. Or if you're an aspiring CARES, you'll get a chance to endorse it when you're here at the CARES Academy. That's when people will get a chance to talk about all of this in even greater detail than we're going to talk about today. And then the other thing I'll do is outline the 4-step ethical decision-making model that we use. Now, many of you have had this when you did your CARES Academy, so I'm not going to go into as much detail with that. It would take a longer webinar to actually do a practice with it, but I'm going to talk about the process and make sure you've got the handouts that are connected with it. And you should have gotten an email today with a PDF version of the handouts. And what those handouts would include would be the ethics code itself, the Faces and Voices of Recovery Bill of Rights, the boundary management worksheet, and the worksheet for the 4-step decision-making process. These are also available at the CARES website. On the CARES section, it's called CARES Rock is the password, and you can find it under the CARES member section. And you can download a lot of other things there as well. All right. So let's go on and start doing this. So this is what the new ethical behavioral code looks like. And what the state did is it wanted to make sure that all of the peer guilds around the state, Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, ours, and the Georgia Parent Network, and the Youth CPSY, that we were all operating from a consistent base of ethical understanding. So the changes that have been made on it are being made to all of them, and that's why this training will be good if you're with the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network as well, because they will accept our trainings. I believe that the Georgia Parents Network will also. So this is what we're going to go over now. And like I said, when you are finishing your CEU submission, you'll be able to say that you endorse this, and then we'll have it recorded. All right. So all certified peer specialists addictive disease and certified peer specialist mental health acknowledge and follow these ethical statements. I'm going to see if someone would like to read the first one. Would anyone? I'm going to ask you to raise your hand on Zoom, and that'll bring you up to the top of the screen. And Jesse, you want to read this one? Can you see it?
Yes, I can see it. Number
All right.
one, as a certified peer specialist, my primary responsibility is to prioritize my recovery. I will conduct myself in a manner that supports and strengthens my personal recovery journey. If I encounter challenges such as struggles with substance use, mental health, or any other personal difficulties that may impact ability to serve peers and perform my job duties effectively, I will immediately notify my supervisor and seek appropriate support.
Thank you. So this is new right here. And one of the important things about the idea is that it's not, for CARES, it's not just a setback dealing with substance use disorder. It would be any kind of setback, mental health, or anything else that makes it difficult for you to be able to continue to do your job. And we know that the biggest problem, if something like that happens, is that our ego might prevent us from actually letting people know that we need help. So this is more about making sure that you get help than it is about any kind of punitive result. You don't become unauthorized as a CARES if you were to return to use. You are certified as a CPSAD in the same way that a physician is certified as an MD or a social worker as an MSW. And that means you have an opportunity to get back to health, and we want to make sure that that happens. I mean, we're on the front lines of this, and the leading cause of death between people aged 19 and 44 is addiction. So we should not be surprised that we also have to deal with some of the consequences that come up about this. So, but are we humble enough to fess up? That's the point that we want people to look at. Prestige and reputation is what keeps us from telling on ourselves. All right. Ashley Black, you had your hand up. Would you like to read number 2? There we go.
Yes. What is the second one?
It's on the screen. Can you see it?
Hold on, let me bring it up.
And if you want to keep your hand up, we'll have somebody read these so you can just be the next person. And you're muted, Ashley.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Number 2, recovery is guided by self-determination. I assist others in achieving their needs, wants, and goals by acknowledging there are many pathways to recovery.
Yes, you hear that all the time at CARES, many pathways. But when we are working with people, do we instinctively, maybe some subconsciously, have a preference for our own path? That is something that tends to happen. And so we want to make that's human nature, that our path was the one, and we don't want to tell people, though we may believe it, we don't want to tell people that if you do what I did, you'll get better. Because if they do what you did and they don't, they might give up on recovery and think that they are someone who's not fixable, someone who can't recover. So we believe, at CARES that the peer knows best what will help them, and we can get that information from them by using motivational interviewing. And that we also believe that if they say the most important thing about their recovery first, then they're more likely to do it. So that's why it's really important to make sure that we give them the chance to talk about what is useful for them, and then to refer them to whichever recovery pathway seems like it would be best for them. Always ask permission to share your own story as well. That's a reminder, one of the things we teach regularly at the CARES Academy. Orlandria, would you like to read number 3?
Yes, I would.
All right.
I will support the Faces and Voices of Recovery Bill of Rights for each person I serve.
Thank you very much. How many of y'all have seen this before? Yeah, if you went to a CARES, a ROSC CARES workshop, a recovery-oriented system of care workshop, we talk about this there. When you interviewed as a CARES, we asked you to each read it when you were in the process of interviewing to become a CARES. And this is important. We have it on the wall at the Georgia Council, in a frame and everything. And if you don't want to frame it, and I would think it would be a great thing to do, especially at an RCO that you work at, but you should read it every once in a while just to remind yourself of what this Bill of Rights is about. We have the right to be considered more than just a statistic. We have the right to select services that build on our strengths. We have the right to respectful, non-discriminatory cares from doctors and all that huge list of people who provide care. We have the right to a healthcare and social services system that recognizes the strengths and needs of people. We have the right, as do our families, to know about the many pathways. So this is really great. And I want to make sure that you all just keep this in mind. This is sort of like our Bill of Rights. This is what we go by when we're talking about how we want to support peers. All right, the next person whose hand is up is Tawana. Tawana, would you read this one? And we're not hearing you, Tawana. I see that you're unmuted, but your microphone may not be working.
Okay, sorry
There we
about
go.
that.
That's good.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. Number 4, I will advocate for the full integration of peers into self-selected recovery communities of their choice and will promote the inherent value of these individuals to those communities. Certified peer specialists are guided by the belief that all individuals have the right to live in the least restrictive and least intrusive environment as defined by the individual.
Thank you, Tawana. Now, this is what we as peers believe. I wonder how many times the places that we work at believe the same thing. Look, for instance, at the places that say that you have to go to church, or that you have to do 12-step meetings, or that you have to do a specific pathway to be able to recover at this specific place. I knew places, I know there are some places that require you to get off your mental health medications to be able to stay there and recover. And that makes me very sad. I think it's really important that we may have to work at a place that doesn't support this idea, but we can advocate for it. And when we talk with our peers, we can always let them know that there are other pathways. And I want to do my best to get you integrated into whatever pathway is the most important one for you. I know, for instance, I'm Buddhist. And I had started going to meditation after my second DUI back in 1995. And I didn't come into recovery for another 6 years. And then it took a while, but I ended up with a really strong recovery because I started a Buddhist flavored recovery meeting at the Atlanta Shambhala Center in 2005. It had 10 minutes of meditation at the beginning, and then the reading was by a 12-step teacher who was a Buddhist practitioner as well. And that helped my recovery so much. And what I know is that anything that helps my recovery will help other people's recovery. We had people driving from all over from 2 or 3 hours away to come see what this meeting looked like when we first started. And those meetings are still going. It'll be 20 years ago that it started in September. So those meetings are still going over there in Decatur. They've continued to help people who need to learn how to meditate. And they continue to help people who have problems with traditional ideas of higher power. And I'm just grateful that, like I said, that what helped me helps them too. And so that's always what I see. But fully integrating someone into their self-selected community when they have the community of people that they can recover with, that's how people recover. You know, almost all recovery happens in the present and in community. I don't know anybody, there are some people perhaps who can get sober alone. I would never have tried to get sober alone. I thought everything was okay. And so that's why it's important to help people find the community that will work the best for them. All right, that's number 4. Can I get Trina to read number 5?
Sure can. Number 5 says, I will maintain a high standard of personal conduct and act in accordance to the law.
There we go. So that is an important one in several different ways. I do stop at stop signs now. And I got a ticket a while back. I got a ticket for not stopping at a stop sign and for turning left where I wasn't supposed to turn left. If I had caused, let's say I had caused some sort of problem with that, let's say people find out that it was a peer specialist who did something like that. That's bad publicity and a bad reflection both on the recovery community and on the place that I work. So that's one of the reasons to try to be law-abiding, just to keep out of trouble, for one thing. But also, I mean, I don't want to see my name in the paper for doing something stupid. And that's one of the important things. And we have to know some aspects of the law in order to do our job. And there is another of these ethical precepts that goes into that in more detail about HIPAA and about 42 CFR, the most important things that affect us if you're working at a sober living facility. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But just think about where you try to cut corners, where you think that you can get away with something. It always catches up with me. And I think it's a great idea just to look at ourselves and see when we're trying to do something other than what we ought to do. But maintaining a high standard of personal conduct and act in accordance with the law, I think, is important. All right. Kyle, would you read number 6?
Yes, thank you. Number 6, I will at all times respect the rights and dignity of those I serve.
There we go. Thank you. And actually, this is where the previous one was where I was supposed to talk about CFR and HIPAA. So let me go back and do that. Sorry about that. So Shane always talks about this, and it's always interesting to see how little we know about some of the things that affect the way that we deal with the legal system. So when you're working, say, at a sober living facility and the police knock on the door, what do you have to do? That's a great thing to keep in mind. Usually we think that's HIPAA, which is spelled HIPAA, just to be specific. But it's interesting that at 42 CFR is what really applies here. HIPAA is about private medical information that you are not supposed to disclose other than people who are helping care for someone. But 42 CFR, which Shane calls HIPAA on steroids, is something that protects people in recovery, specifically protects their medical records. And so that's something that can be really fierce if you run across it in the wrong direction. So if someone shows up with a warrant that has somebody's name on it, that is not a legal warrant for purposes of 42 CFR. You can neither confirm nor deny in that case that person is in your facility. To get around that, the warrant needs to have the name John Doe on it. But when they get there, they tell you the name of the person they're looking for. And that is a valid warrant, and that person might need to be surrendered to the police. But we all know that some of us get in trouble when we're dealing with stuff. We all know that we can work ourselves out of it also. And that's the thing that's really important for me, to make sure that I follow the law and that I don't get the place that I work at in trouble. That would be a protect the check kind of thing. And it's important to familiarize yourself with these legal requirements. And there is probably someone at your facility who knows what this refers to. But also just, whoops, went in the wrong direction. Sorry about that. There we go. So that's another aspect of making sure that we maintain a high standard of personal conduct. Now, Kyle, would you read number 6? Again.
Yeah. Number 6 again. I will at all times respect the rights and dignity of those I serve.
And I will tell you where I get in the biggest trouble with something like this, with my sense of humor. Because I can say something that I don't mean for it to be pointed or disrespectful, or something that someone is not going to be able that's going to really embarrass or anger somebody. And I know of a lot of people, I used to do this a lot more than I do now, who would say something like that and then say, oh, that's just a joke. And that is probably not just a joke if it came into your mind. And it's something that's really important for us to do. I found that if I left my sense of humor at home, I was a much better coworker and employee. So just keep an eye out about what you might be doing that might not be as respectful as you think it is. And we can do this accidentally. And if we do, I know that most people are very good if you just say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say that. You know, whether it's an incorrect pronoun, whether it is a word that comes out that embarrasses them, you know, whatever it is, an apology goes a long way. And it's sometimes hard for us to apologize also when our ego gets involved. But yes, respecting peers, their dignity, their understanding, their compassion, their trust, their autonomy, self-direction, inclusion, and empowerment. Those are all great words in that word cloud. So that's number 6. Number 7, Bridget, would you like to read number 7?
Yes, sir.
Let me change the slide. Hang on just a second. There we go.
I will not practice, condone, facilitate, or collaborate in any form of discrimination.
Thank you. And so, what does condoning discrimination look like? In my mind, that is seeing it and not saying anything. And it is important, you know, here you've heard people say a lot, if you see something, say something. And it is really easy to let things slide if we feel like it's putting us out there a little further than we want to. But I know that the most important thing that an ally does is speak up for me. Allies speak up when I'm not there. Allies speak up when I need backup. I need to be able to say it, but the ally is what I'm doing at this time. And I just know that I need to say something. When I worked at the hospital, I can tell you, I met with people who were Nazis, and I met with people who were racists. I met with people who would have been homophobic if they had known that I was gay. And when I was working both as a chaplain at UAB Medical Center and as a peer, I could always put that aside and know that I wish the best for them, you know, and some of them are harder than others. I just know that if you find that you're working with someone who you cannot do this with, it's time for a warm handoff. You can you can see if there's another peer who would be able to help you with this. So I think this is an important way to look at this too. But you can think about what would be the hardest thing for you to look at if you were supporting a peer. What would give you more difficulty and more problems in supporting someone? And how would you get around it? And if we had time, I would make this a breakout room with a question. So if we end up doing this at some point, I think this is a really good one for us to look at because we think we'd be good peers and sometimes it's harder to do than we think. All right, I'm going to read number 8 because it's long and because I want to read it in a very specific way. I will provide recovery services regardless of someone's age, sex, gender, race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, religion, marital status, political belief, language, socioeconomic status, mental or physical condition, or any other preference or personal characteristic, condition, or state. If differences that impact the motivation for recovery occur, I seek consultation and if necessary, make referral to another recovery support. I wanted to read that like that because whenever I see this list, I sort of just, I sort of check out after about the 3rd one. And I wanted to stop after every one because that's one way to show all the kind of support that we offer people, all the kind of people who are going to need our support. I think it's important for us to make sure that we do this. And it was interesting because when I was at the hospital, I was gay, but I don't look particularly gay. And it was really hard for me to figure out how to let people know that I would be good support for that. And I will tell you what I did is I got a rainbow pop socket and put it on my phone. And that's a very subtle way to do it, but a lot of people figured out what that was about. And that was a way that I could self-disclose that I would be good support for someone who often feels like they're not expecting to get good support. So I was Buddhist also, and I tried wearing a little Buddhist tie tack on my tie, and nobody noticed. So there are lots of ways that we can let people know that we support them. Using correct pronouns. It's just respectful. I don't think it's any kind of attempt to be woke or anything like that. I think it's just about knowing that I can create a good relationship with you almost from the beginning if you can see that I'm respectful toward you and want to honor who you are. And whoever that is, that's the way that I think we should look at that. All right, I'm going to go on to number 9. Would someone like to read this one? Crystal.
I will never intimidate, threaten, harass, use undue influence, physical force, sexual advantages, or verbal abuse, or unwarranted promises of benefits to the individuals I serve. Sorry.
Thank you, Crystal. So watch out for bullies is what I think this is about. And one way to watch out for bullies is also to make sure that we are not accidentally bullying someone, that we are not trying to push them into a recovery pathway or a recovery community that they don't want to be a part of. So sometimes one of the things that we talk about when we are grading CARES applications is this person telling their story in a way that is designed to help the person they're talking to? Or are they trying to very subtly manipulate them into doing what they want them to do? And that's something that we see sometimes when people use their story. They say, well, that didn't work out for me, so you better not do that. So we always have to be aware and pay attention to how we're using our story and how we are able to support other people. But I will never do anything like this, and that seems obvious. So I know that we're not going to do anything basically bullying, but there's even very subtle and quiet ways to bully. So keep an eye out for that and make sure that you are listening to them and putting them first. I think that's what's important there. All right, I was going to number 10, Veronica Brown.
Yes. Number 10, I share my lived experiences to help others identify meaningful resources and support that promote hope and recovery.
Thank you. This is another version of one that we talked about a little earlier, asking permission to share your lived experience and not prioritizing your own pathway over someone else's. And just making sure that you are listening to what they're saying. I came in as an agnostic person. I came in and my spiritual beliefs have changed a lot. But in that first 30 days, if someone had really tried to push me into like a religious program, I would have walked away probably. And that's where the advantage for listening is rather than pushing, rather than, rather than trying to get someone to do something that they might not want to do. All right, I'm going to stop here briefly. Dwayne, do we have any questions that we want to discuss?
So all the questions were actually answered
Okay.
in the chat, but we had a lot of good feedback and comments on when you went over number 5 about the HIPAA and everything. A lot of information people weren't aware of, didn't know about the warrant piece, and a couple of comments. So if this is a time, if anybody has any questions about anything that has been said so far, feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you and try to get your question answered.
This is Vanya. Alvin, can you explain the difference with the warrant thing? What differentiates that when you talked about John Doe and then the person saying the name?
So first of all, about HIPAA. HIPAA is primarily something that hospitals deal with.
Yeah.
I just want to, that's the one I am more familiar with since I worked at a hospital for 4 years. So the 42 CFR is a law that prevents anyone from disclosing when you have gotten treatment for recovery against your will, exposing it against your will. So that protects people from that. The idea is that people will not want to go into recovery if someone's going to disclose that they've done that. So
Right.
when you're at the treatment facility, for instance, you are bound by 42 CFR, and you're not going to go out and tell people who's in your facility. But if you have committed a crime and someone might be coming to give you a warrant, they have to know, if they're coming there, that they cannot put your name on the warrant. That would be putting your name on a legal document at a place where you're trying to get recovery would be disclosing your identity. So they can't do that. What they put is John Doe on there. And then when they get there, they'll tell you the name of the person they're looking for. So that maintains that person's privacy as far as public records go. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It did. I just wanted it more,
Yeah.
clarification. Mm-hmm.
All right. And I'm no expert. So if I find out that I told you anything that wasn't right, I will get back to you. All right. I'm going to just go on now, I think, since that was that's always very impactful at the CARES Academy as well. Everybody is just fascinated by those little differences in what we can do and what we can't. And especially if you're working in a place where something like that comes up. All right, Krista Kendrick, would you like to read number 11?
Sure. 11. It is my duty to respect and protect the privacy of those I serve and other CPSs, and I will abide by confidentiality guidelines set by my employer, the law, and recovery spaces.
So we've already talked about the law. Think about what specific rules there might be at the place that you work, because it's important to remember that where we work may have rules, extra rules on top of what the law requires. And you'll find out about that once you're working at a place and you find out what their standards and their practices are. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. The other thing that I think goes here is just gossip. It is really tempting. I found it very tempting to talk with my colleagues about the people who were my patients at the hospital. And I say patients because that's what the hospital called them. I had to sort of fight back the urge to talk about things with anyone other than among the four of us. There were 4 peers working at the hospital. And so I could talk with them because they would be the ones who would be visiting this peer when I wasn't there. Say the next day I was off and they were there, they might need to know what was going on with this person. And that's when I would take an opportunity to talk with them. But especially at like sober livings and things like that, don't gossip. It's really hard not to just tell people something that you shouldn't, disclose. And I'll tell you, at a 12-step meeting, this was my most mortifying and embarrassing thing in this regard. Someone had shared something a few weeks back in a meeting that I thought would have been particularly helpful to this person who was in front of me. So I told the story. It was very, very unique circumstances about what had happened to this person. And when I finished, they said, "Oh, you know Charlie too." They knew exactly who I was talking about. And I was embarrassed that I had disclosed information about Charlie's life to someone when Charlie wasn't there. And that was, why would they consider me trustworthy after that? Why would they trust me with anything after they saw that I couldn't keep their business private? So that's why this one is important. It makes you a more credible recovery ally when you don't gossip. All right, number 12. This one is for Terrence to read. Let me click the thing. There we go. And I'll get you to read both of them, Terrence.
Okay. I will not engage in sexual or intimate relationships with peers or their immediate family members while they are actively receiving services from the organization whom I am employed with. Read 13 as well.
Please.
I will refrain from engaging in sexual or intimate relationships with a peer for at least 1 year after services within the organization for whom I am employed have ended.
So these are both new. And does anybody know what the previous requirement was for peers with someone who you had been working with? When could you have a relationship with them?
Absolutely never.
Never. And as George would say, never is a long, long time. You know? And so the idea was that we were making hypocrites out of people, and that people do find other people to have relationships with, and they should not be banned for life from having a relationship with someone. They shouldn't have to choose between their certification and a person they're in love with. And so these are the two places that they came up with information about that. And I think changing it to 1 year is good. I think it's a really good, some people think when we put this out for comments, we had people who said it was too long. We had people who said it wasn't long enough. And so I think that what I have found is that if I am strongly attracted to someone, if I leave them alone for a year, usually that goes away. If it lasts for a whole year, then if I've gone to the trouble to mark July 17th on my calendar as the day when I can give them a call, then it may be worth looking at. And that's when you can give them, that's when you are not bound by ethical constraints for doing anything. I really appreciate number 12 as well. I will not engage in sexual or intimate relationships with peers or their immediate family while they are actively receiving services. Can you imagine if a peer came to you and said, I heard you're dating my sister? That would not go over very well, I don't think. So keep an eye out for that. This actually only says that you cannot deal with family members. It looks like it specifically says while you're serving that peer. You cannot have sexual or intimate relations with the peer until at least 1 year after they have stopped getting services from your organization. So that means if you stop seeing them, but they continue to see other people at your place for 6 more months, you still would have, it would be 18 months before you could interact with them because they were still coming to your facility and you're still connected to you in that way. So this is one that y'all might have questions about when I open up the next slot of questions. But I think this is a little more like the real world, and even there are some places like counselors and social workers that didn't have a never, that had something like 5 years or something like that. It would depend on which state you were in and what those standards were. And so I think our 1 year standards are reasonable. And we can talk about that later if that's something y'all have an opinion about. All right, let's go on to number 14. Charles.
Okay. I will not lend, borrow money, or accept gifts of significant value from the peers I serve.
Thank you.
That's important.
It is, and it surprises me in some ways that we need to say things like the last two that we had and like this one. Obviously, accepting a gift can also, refusing a gift can insult someone, and you might need to figure out how to handle that. One thing that you could do, if it's some piece of artwork or something like that, you could perhaps display it at the RCO that you work at. And that way the peer doesn't feel like they've exposed themselves to you and you've rejected it. But one of the points that we talk about in the CARES Academy, suppose you said, I wish I had a Coke. And someone who you had just met with heard that and went and bought you a Coke with money on her EBT card that she did not have to spare and won't be able to give her child a snack that day because she bought that for you. Just one, that $3 gift could cost her more than other people, a huge gift from somebody else. So, and also if you are doing anything like, say, if someone asks for a cigarette, did you bring enough for everybody? Or are you going to be showing favoritism to the person that you give one to and don't give to the others? So just keep in mind, gift giving can be a weird thing. And just try to handle it with integrity. And each situation will be different depending upon the personality of that person. This would be a great one to talk with your colleagues about, I think, if something comes up that you're not certain about. But do not lend money. Oh my goodness. or accept gifts of significant value. I think that's a big one. All right, number 15. Miranda.
I will avoid dual relationships, conflicts of interest, and financial dealings with the peers I serve.
Thank you. So dual relationships. Can you sponsor the person that you're serving? Can you be the pastor of the person you're serving? Could you be the counselor of the person who you're also serving as a peer? That's very confusing. So this is what dual relationships can cause. If you, when you look at sponsorship, and they have talked about this in most of the AA meetings that I'm familiar with as well, take someone into your home. Oh my goodness. Hire them. Oh my goodness. The kinds of things that can cause problems with people are numerous, and it's really good to just have that one peer relationship with them. I don't think that you're shorting their recovery by not supporting them in every way that you can. You're supporting them in the way that you're the most valuable and the most helpful. So watch out and make sure that you don't get caught in one of those tangled things where there's 4 or 5 different things going on. I had that happen with a sponsor, and I was lucky that I was able to rebuild the relationship with him. But we did have to stop working as a sponsor, and that can happen if you don't watch out. And Jonathan, excuse me. Charles, we'll do questions in a minute. Was that Charles?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do questions in a minute. Jonathan.
I will improve my recovery service knowledge and skills through emerging and ongoing education, training, and supervision in alignment with my training agency's continuing education policy.
Thank you. So I hope that none of you are at the point where you haven't educated yourself beyond your CARES Academy. Because there is so much that is changing. The further back you go and the more experience you have, the more that has changed during that time. And it's really important for you to continue to keep abreast of all the new things that are happening, all the terminology, all the medicine. Suboxone is such a miracle drug for people who need it. And it wasn't around when no one was talking about it when I was in the CARES Academy. I think just briefly, and half the time people who came into the CARES Academy back then had really bad opinions about what to do, how to support people who might be using methadone. So it's really important to keep educating yourself and engaging with ongoing education training. I know that there are some people out there who think they should take the minimum number of CEUs so they can spend more time helping the peers they work with. But I don't think personally that that's a great suggestion, because I think the more you learn, the better peer you become for the people you're working with. So, and you're all here, so I hope you agree with that. That's awesome. All right. That's it. The above principles will guide me in my role as well as in relationships and levels of responsibility in which I function. All right, who has a question?
And if you could lower your hands if you were raising it to read one of the slides so we can decipher the two. Carol.
Good evening, everyone. So I appreciate this webinar and your support. My question, I think, is the part where you were saying that my recovery comes first. Before even my service to another peer, I think sometimes because of the, let's just say the dynamics of the work I do, where I work, and my own personal relationship, that I kind of fumbled that ball maybe a few weeks ago and forgot that if my recovery doesn't come first, then I'm in trouble. And it kind of bleeds out in other areas. Thank you for pointing that out. My thought here is, I know you say protect the check, but I find that sometimes in dealing with different situations, I'd rather protect my integrity than protect the check.
Mhm.
Is that being egotistical?
It might require you to change jobs at some point. If you get to the point where you feel like the person you're working with or the place you're working with isn't acting with integrity, won't listen to you when you advocate for what you need to do, what you think you need to do, then maybe you are in the wrong place. Does that make
Thank you.
sense?
At this point, absolutely. I
Okay.
appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Danica.
Hey,
Can you hear
Danica.
me?
Yes.
Hey. So I have a few questions, but not just questions, but I want to go ahead and do my input on a lot of things you was talking about. I love the Georgia Council. I love the way that you guys explain things, and I love getting my certification from you guys. Many places I have worked do not implement a lot of these rules. That's why I started my own business. One particular place, their job was their recovery, which I thought that was like, okay, I know we talked about our jobs not being our recovery. And I know that with like a lot of our peers, say if we're at a coffee shop and I'm like, I offer a coffee, maybe $1 or something, if that is fine. I know in the past it was fine. I don't know what it is now. Another thing is the respect, because we all are in our own recovery as well. The respect that you have to have for your employees being in recovery as well. So that looks like to me, if we have past traumas, right? Something can get us into going back into memory of what we have been through, which is whether it's hostile environments or whether it's, somebody is micromanaging you or not letting you be your peer self. When I mean peer self, you're following by every rule. At one job I had where they explained if you got in trouble, make sure you report it to us as being honest. Make sure you report it and we'll go from there. You're not going to lose your job, but we have to do an investigation, blase, blase. But just for us that works in this type of field, now I'm a doula, I'm a surgical VBAC doula. I deal with mental health. I deal with trauma. I go through, different seminars. I get different CEUs with Samson, different, different things. And I put all that together. And I try to, or I abide by the rules. But for me, I had to take myself out of the element. And it's not for everybody, but I had to take myself out of the element of working for companies that did not understand me. Or people that was doing it for just a check when I never did it for a check. I always did it for the reason because I was that particular person that was in that same, same shoes or similar shoes as that person. And yes, having a story. And also I want to elaborate on something when you're asking your peer.
We need to make sure other people get some questions in. So if you would make this one really quick.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure because I have, I've noticed a lot of things that is still till this day seems like it will never change. And I'm not saying that in a way of you guys not putting it out there or other people, but in these organization rehabilitations, re-entry, other organizations, they do not implement these things. So then here we go back to square one.
So one of the things that I would say is, every workplace has something like this. There's a reason they call it work, and there's a reason they pay you to do it, And a lot of people who want to have that kind of input start their own places. And I think that's a really great idea once we've reached the point that we can pull that together and make that happen. Sometimes we have to advocate for ourselves to make sure that people aren't giving us things that we haven't been trained to do. And lots of people, lots of peers sometimes do assessments and things like that. They're asked to do that at the employer that they work at. And that's not a CARES activity. So that's where you do have to look at, weighing the check versus weighing the job versus figuring out where you can give the most help. It's all figuring out where you belong in the world, and what gives you the best opportunity to help the peer the way you want to. So thank you for saying that. Cornell.
Trying to unmute myself. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just a little unclear about the police showing up at the door.
Okay.
Are we supposed to turn that person over or not? I mean, I was a little unclear.
If they come with a warrant that says John Doe and tells you they're there for Cornell Carradine, you are legally required to let them in. If they come with a warrant that says Cornell Carradine, then you can neither confirm nor deny your presence there, because they don't have a valid warrant, because a judge will only issue a warrant for someone who's at a treatment facility if the judge knows to keep their name private so they won't break 42 CFR. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
One more time.
Okay. It may be that I'm glad that I don't have to explain this because I'm not the expert on it.
All right.
But, they can't, if they come with a warrant that has the name of the person on it, you can neither confirm nor deny, because you are bound to protect the person who's seeking treatment. You're bound to protect their privacy.
All right.
But if they come with a warrant that says John Doe, and then they tell you that they're there for that person, that's a legally issued warrant.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Miranda. Did you have something?
Al.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. When I was in the process of getting my CARES, I was also in the process of getting my master's in social work. And when you were talking about 12 and 13, as a master social worker, I can never engage with anybody sexually.
So that's a never for you?
So I'm going to have to go up a little higher. And my question, I don't want to say that this is higher than the CARES certification, because I'm a CARES before I'm anything else. But they hold me at a higher level of standard. So I have to go by that or I lose my license. You see what I'm saying?
Whatever the higher standard is, that's the one you have to.
That's the one I have to go by, right? Okay. So my question, that was my question basically, is but I think it's already been answered. When you because I'm looking at, when I look at some of these, it's like, what would a social worker do? What would a CARES do? And then on my job, I'm a program director. So it's like, woo-wee.
You got a lot of hats.
Right. And I got a lot of ethical boundaries that I gotta be real considerate of.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm gonna say this about myself and being real honest, right? Sometimes because of those hats I wear, sometimes I don't always fall in line like I should. Like on my organization, like right now, I'm sitting here as a program director, right? And if I have a client in front of me, and it's always based on their circumstances. If they need food, I'm gonna go buy them food.
Okay.
If the agency that I'm working for can't get it for them, I'm gonna go get them some food.
Yeah,
so you see what I'm saying?
I do, and I suspect that if you'll do that for everybody and not show any
I'll do it for
favoritism,
all 40 of them.
yeah, I think that that's probably the ethically acceptable response to that, to satisfy the need for anybody who comes in front of you.
So it's sort of like, I don't know, sometimes it's like, I guess I just got too many hats.
That's why you get the big bucks, Miranda. So
All
guys,
right.
I'm going to move on with the presentation to make sure we look at everything. I will not spend a lot of time on some of this because you went over it at your CARES Academy, and then we'll just devote whatever time is left to questions. But thank you. This is really good discussion. I will skip that ethical dilemma there because it's one that's internal at the CARES at Georgia Council. But so here is the boundary management worksheet. And this is something that we give everybody at a CARES Academy, and we ask them to fill it out before they come in the next day for the ethics training. And we ask people to say, is it always safe to give a gift? Is someone vulnerable? Is it sometimes okay and sometimes not when we give a gift? Or is it danger? Is it something we should never do? And we asked them just to go down the list and put these. And what's really interesting is that nobody is going to have the same list as yours. Everybody's going to have a different opinion about some of these. And what that brings out about ethics is that we do all have different standards. I mean, for instance, look down here at the bottom. Let's say, should you attend a peer's wedding? You know, some people might find that crossing a boundary. Some people might find that a self-care issue for themselves. Some people might say, I have to go. That's such a great thing to celebrate. So look at any of these. You tell someone, you're very attractive. You know, is that creepy? Is that a compliment that will make them feel better about themselves? You know, does it depend on who it is? Does it depend on how much they've already figured out that you might have a crush on them? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into each of these. Look at giving a peer a ride in your personal vehicle. I suspect that where a lot of people work, there are already rules about stuff like this. And if not, you might want to get them because, you know, it can be when you're in the car alone with somebody else, I would say that there is at least vulnerable, if not danger. And yet we all do something like this, I assume. You know, at some point, taking someone into your house. I would tell people I never do that, but I did it once. And that person actually saved my life in some ways. When I took him in and he became a better way for me to manage my affairs. So, you know, it's all, so look at this list. You got a copy of it in the PDF that I sent you. And it's a chance for you to look at this. Give your peer your personal cell phone number. Oh, do you do that? I got a Google Voice number, but it doesn't make much difference because it rings on my phone the same way as the regular ring does. But you know, I need to be able to figure out how to have some me time in here. And so the vulnerable party when I do that might be me as opposed to the person I'm working with. So check out this list and you can look at it. It'll just give you some idea about the kind of things that we do and give you a chance to think about whether they really are good for you to be doing or not. All right. So this is just a scenario of the kind of thing that can happen. And I'm just going to read it just so that you know that things can surprise you. So you work in a hospital setting and your coworker, who is also a CARES, tells you that her brother-in-law is coming to the hospital to seek placement in detox. They ask if you will go see him. When you go to see the peer, he has already decided to leave AMA. Your coworker asks how the encounter went, and you tell them that he left AMA. Seems reasonable enough, doesn't it? When you go see what happened, you get a call from your supervisor who informs you that the peer has called the hospital to file a complaint for violation of privacy. Your coworker told their sister that the peer left against medical advice, and she uses that information as evidence in a child custody battle that you were not made aware of that was going on. And you learn that your coworker also used their position at the hospital to call and get your peer's urine drug screen results and shared them with the sister as well. So that one disclosure of yours puts you at risk for losing your job, and your hospital at risk for the stuff that that you did. Would the hospital decide maybe to terminate the peer program because peers can't be trusted? You know, so that's how these things can unfold. You know, it's why it's important to know what to do and have an ethical sense of when and why to do it. All right. So I'm going to talk about the ethical decision making. So what this does is it gives you a way to use a tool, a standard process for deciding what to do instead of just doing what your gut says. Because it's not unusual for us to look at a situation and decide what to do, and then look around for people who will co-sign us, look around for people who agree with us, and kind of ignore the people who don't. So this is a really good way to look at how you can process this and figure out what's going on in a very difficult situation. Now, like I said, we're not going to go over this ourselves. At some other point, perhaps we'll have a webinar that goes into more detail, but I did want to just talk about the ethical steps. The first thing you would do in a situation is ask yourself, who are the vulnerable parties? When this thing came up at the hospital, who would be the vulnerable party? So you would be, your coworker would be, the hospital would be, and the damage had already been done to the patient that you were working with, to the peer. So you can see that just looking at all of that to make a decision rather than just going with your gut and telling her what happened might have been a better process. So number two, what core recovery values apply in this situation? What recovery values are important in what we're talking about? What are your recovery values? We're going to look at that in just a minute as well. What laws, standards, historical practices might guide your behavior? You know, what might be important for you to take in consideration outside, you know, of the structure that you work in? And after you've done something, you should document what you considered doing, who you consulted, and what you ended up doing. So let's look at these, each of these in a little more detail. So there are 6 areas of accountability when you're looking at a situation. Some of these might apply in some situations and not others. So one of the person who might be affected is the person or the family that you're serving. Another one is you, the recovery coach. Another one is the agency or the organization that you work for. Another is the recovery support services field or our profession. You know, if we behave badly as peers, it reflects on peers. Even at a higher level, if we behave badly as a person in recovery, it reflects on the recovery community. And the more high profile something becomes, the more it reflects. You know, you see these things in the news about people who did something great. You don't want to be the person who's in the news for doing something terrible. But sometimes you find yourself in a situation where there are no good choices. And that's why this tool can help you come up with what would seem to be the least worst option. And finally, the larger community at large. You know, what would society, how would they be reflected by this? All right, so once you've listed those, you can go and look and see which ethical decisioning, what are your values? What will help you make your ethical decision? So here are a lot of recovery values: honesty, fidelity, service, protection, humility, hope, cares values, stewardship, obedience, autonomy. What are your values? You know, some people might think the person that they're working with is more important. Some might think that the reputation of the profession is more important. I can't be seen doing that. So look at what your values are. And as always, I'd encourage you to consider using the CARES values. And here they are. We studied these at the CARES Academy and in the ROSC workshops that we do. So if you did a ROSC workshop, you heard us talk about recovery, hope, wellness, diversity, commitment, and integrity. We think these are the things that are the most important for a CARES to do. To support recovery by being willing to talk about your own, to be a person who can help others find hope for recovery, To always take care of your wellness, because if you're not well, you're not going to be able to help other people. To support diversity, we want everybody to recover. Every person should get a chance to recover. Commitment, or are you just going to give up at some point? You know, at some point, sometimes we have to give up, but a commitment is an important thing for us to look at. And integrity, what you do when nobody's watching. Are you honest? Do you tell people, are you trustworthy? When you show up, do people say, yes, I can trust him with this. I can trust her with this. These are what we think are the really important values for CARES to be able to do their job. All right, step 3 is what laws, standards, and historical practices might guide you in your conduct. If you were thinking about HIPAA and had a good understanding of it, you wouldn't even have told your coworker what you had found out when you went to visit that patient. I can tell you, I had a similar situation when I was at UAB. I had 2 brothers who were in the same hospital for 2 different addiction-related things. One of them did not give his family the permission to talk to them. So the mother and the son were in one part of the hospital, and the other son was in the other, and I couldn't tell anybody anything about what anybody else was doing. So that's the kind of thing that you find out, and finding out what the place you work, how they deal with the laws. Do they have any standards that are higher than the law that they want you to hold to no matter what? And what have they done in the past? Historical practices, because those are things that you want to keep doing, or you want to look at whether they worked in the past and see if you don't want to keep doing them. So those are the things that you look at when you're making your final decision. And then, what did you consider doing? Who did you consult? What did you decide to do? And what was the outcome? So that anybody who comes along like 6 months later and the same situation's going on, they've got something to refer back to. And you start developing a set of standards at the place that you work so that they would be able so that you can be professional and they can all be professional in the same way. So you see how this takes away the idea of you just go with your gut and then take a poll and see who agrees with you. That's the important thing here. You've got a process that you can do to come up with where you should be going on things. And so here is that worksheet. This was a part of what you were emailed as well. I saw one person say they didn't get this, so this will all be attached when you get your certificate next week as well. So if you don't have it, you'll get it. So here's all the stuff that I was just talking about. Step 1 is who is vulnerable. Step 2, what values apply. Step 3, what laws, standards, and practices might guide your conduct, and what did you do? And that is also available on the CARES website in the CARES members section with the password capital C, capital A, capital R, capital E, capital S, ROCK, R-O-C-K, not capital for the last 4 letters. CARES ROCK. And you can find these forms there as well. Questions. We're back to questions.
Al, there was one question. Let me pull it up.
Okay.
I think they were asking, are CARES mandated reporters in Georgia? That was a question from Sajada.
And to my knowledge, if someone says they are going to harm themselves, I think you are supposed to say something.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we are.
I don't know if it would differ from where you work or not. So I would encourage you to go back and ask your supervisor where you're working, what their opinion on mandated, because you would want to let.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Most therapeutic community organizations are mandated
reporters. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to say categorically without having, confirmed that. But they're mandated reporters, but that also gives you the opportunity to be confidential with them about things that are not threatening their life and not threatening someone else's life. And you want to make sure that your peer can trust you and tell you what's going on. I know that when I was charting and when I was working at the hospital with the team, they expected me to tell them what was going on. And sometimes it was hard to figure out how much I could tell them that they needed to know without violating my peers' confidence. So ask yourself who's the most important, and that might come back to another question about how you work with the peer versus how you protect or check. But but just, that's why an ethical standard helps with something like this.
Nice. Thank you.
Tonya?
Hi, Alvin. How are you?
Hey.
I have a quick question. Okay, so as a CARES CPS, we uphold the Bill of Rights for CARES.
Mhm.
Is there a law for the workplace to uphold us as CPSs?
You mean, so I think your employer can ask you to do pretty much whatever they want you to do. There's no law that would prevent an employer from asking a doctor to, to do something, I'm assuming. Just depends on whether you have any reason to believe that what they're asking you to do would harm someone. Or use your own, come up with your own ethical standard. But like I was saying earlier, that needs to comply with with what your employer expects of you as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay. Can take a question or two more. Danica, you're back.
Can I add a little bit to what she said, Al?
Alvin? Who is
Just
that?
once, this Miranda.
Okay, Miranda.
As a social worker, I take out my own insurance that protects me.
Whoa.
In case anybody may want to come back and sue me for anything that may have conspired. And they offer that. I joined the National Association of Social Workers, and they provide that insurance as a protective agent for me.
I don't know of anything like that for peers yet. At some point, we might have something like that.
The EEOC.
The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission?
Yes, sir. That's gonna protect you. I had a quick question.
Okay.
So I partnered with a company which is BVM, Black Voters Matter. We service everybody, right? So if I'm trying to get the elderly that does not have a vehicle in my vehicle to take them to the voting polls, would that be something that will hinder me? Because I am partnered with them and because I do work for them, do some work for them as well. And I'm a 501c. And so, they help me with a lot of my grants as well. That shouldn't be a problem, right, Mr. Alvin? Or would it?
So you're going to have the values that you have as to the work that you're doing and how you're doing it and how. So yeah, I would look at your own values and see if this is the right thing for you to be doing. I don't think it would affect your, and that's why that form didn't say that was always wrong.
Okay.
That was, is it always safe? Is it sometimes vulnerable, or is it not safe, danger zone?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So look
thank
at that
you.
and see where you think that lands for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Carrie, I'm going to do one more. I think we need to stop after one more.
Okay, so like you were talking about the wedding, is it unethical to go to a wedding? Well, if a client passes away, I had one recently. I was the parent support for a grandmother and a grandfather that had all of their grandchildren. And he passed away suddenly. The children witnessed him die. He had a heart attack. And I ended up going to the funeral to provide support. Do you think funerals are unethical?
I don't even think marriages are unethical. I think that, again, that's one of those on the same list where you decide what your values are. And I think there are some people who would absolutely decide they need to support their peer, and there are other people who would say, my self-care is more important, and I'm going to stay home and take a bubble bath. I'm going to take care
I
of
just
myself.
wondered about funerals because you had mentioned weddings, and that was the first funeral. I've been in social service 17 years, and that was the first funeral that I had ever went to because I'd worked with the family for a longer period as far as being a parent support. And so I felt like I needed to be there to support the grandmother and the children.
Then if you felt you needed to be there, I'm glad you were there.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. I think we're running up on time. I'll hang out a little while after we leave if anybody wants to follow up with anything. But I'm going to turn it back over. I'm going to turn it back over to Dwayne. Thank you, Dwayne,
Thank you,
for your support.
Alvin.
All right, before all the thank yous in the chat, I'm gonna drop some information in the chat if you need to get in contact with me or Alvin and the CARES phone number. Okay. Thank you, Al, for this great presentation. That was awesome.
Thank you.
As far as certificates, again, those will come 1 to 2 weeks after this presentation, and it will come from Alvin, your presenter, as well. And you can get the presentation slides. I think Al is going to send those when he sends out the certificate, so you will get a copy of the presentation. As we get closer to the end of this year, I just want to remind all of you all just to keep up with your CEUs, because it's almost time to submit. And if you have any questions about CARES Connects, getting on a waiting list, upcoming trainings, just because it's on the top of my head, I will tell y'all that the next ethics training will be on October 2nd. It hasn't been posted yet. It'll probably be posted a month before it takes place. So just keep up with your CEUs, because we're getting towards the end of the year. And that's all I got. You all are free to go.
Thank you,
Y'all-
Dwayne. Thank you. You rock.
Y'all could do all your thank yous now.
Thank you, Alvin.
Wayne,
Great
Wayne, can you
Welcome.
repeat?
Great
Thank
week,
you.
everyone.
Thank you,
everybody.
Can I ask you a question, please?
38.
Why are you so noisy?
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Dwayne.
No problem.
CARES 10 is the best.
Hey, Vanya. Air 39.
There's 40, baby.
There's 67 for the win.
CARES 63.
Bye-bye.
One of the top 73 for sure. That's
10 is the best.
CARES 60, CARES 60.
Yeah, you young buck. You're a young buck.
Yeah, they young. They don't know that.
Yeah, young buck.
There's 18 for the real.
Oh, they're
Okay,
babies.
now
They're
you
babies.
Yeah.
Bye,
babies.
everybody. Thank you.
Vanya.
Hey, what's up, Cassie?
Here's
Dwayne.
53, baby. Where's Shay at?
Mhm.
Vanya.